How do you explain bending spoons to your grandmothers?
We acquire companies and improve them. We just try to be the best operators of digital technology businesses globally.
We were so naive. We didn't know anything about business, about tech even. We just had this very strong desire to build something together.
Your first acquisition was, I think, $10,000 US. Now you're writing 9-figure checks. I don't know what the most expensive acquisition is. Maybe you can share.
I can't say which one it is, but I can say it's $500 million.
We'll always think in terms of, let's think about all the people we have in the company. Is there a place where each one of them, if moved, could be creating more value?
We look at the jobs we offer as a product. We want it to be far and away the best product in the world for super bright, super driven people.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Icons podcast. Today from beautiful but very hot Milan, with Luca Ferrari and Matteo Danelli, founders of Bending Spoons. Cool to have you.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me here in your beautiful new office. So let's kick off with the classic. How do you explain bending spoons to your grandmothers? Have you tried, and how did you do that?
I can take this one. Well, on the face of it, it's actually quite simple. We acquire companies and improve them, rinse and repeat. In practice, a lot more sophisticated and difficult than that. But we just try to be the best operators of digital technology businesses globally. And when someone wants to sell, if we think we can make that business more successful, we'll probably be a great acquirer and operator.
Cool. And then maybe double clicking on that, when we met initially a few years ago, the apps were focused on creator apps from my perspective, but now this got way broader. So was that a strategy all along, or did you say that space with creators, photo editing, video editing, and became, too small for the ambitions of you and the company?
We've always been very broad in what we were looking at. I think there was a point where a fairly large share of our portfolio was within those segments you just mentioned, but not out of a grand design, merely, I think, as at the time we were focused primarily on mobile. Today things have changed. And the photo and video category is huge on mobile. If you exclude games, which we haven't done, then you're very likely to do a lot of photo and video if you work in mobile, doing what we do. So it was not because we liked it especially or we thought it was particularly promising, but more selection bias out of just the sheer amount of businesses in that segment.
Amazing. And we'll go through the differences and similarities of the apps that you own and operate in a bit. But first, kind of to your founding and founder story, because obviously that's a very long marriage. I think on average, founder marriages are longer than actual marriages. So how did you get together, and what did you see in each other that made you click, basically?
All right, I'll give my half of the story, then I'll hand it over to Matt for the rest. So we met a long time ago, probably 16, 17 years ago, something like that. And in Denmark, in Copenhagen, where we both were studying at the time, I remember I had pneumonia. I got pneumonia there early on out of too much enthusiasm and the temperatures being too low. You just said Milan is hot. We're not used to such cold.
You've had to buy your first jacket, probably, yeah?
Exactly. So I was sick and I'd been nursing myself at home, whereas one of our co-founders and a good friend, Francisco, decided to go downtown for the evening on his own because I was typically his pal, but I was sick. And then he comes back. I wake up in the morning on Sunday. I talk to him and he tells me, I actually met an Italian in downtown, a very nice guy, Matteo, and is coming by later today to for a chat. And so later in the morning, Matteo comes and we meet for the first time. And he was fairly slick, well-dressed, and had a sort of composure that made me immediately dislike him intensely. I thought it came across to me as shallow and conceited. Later, as I got to know him better, and now we're basically brothers, we've gone through so many experiences over almost 20 years, like I said. I know he's such a thoughtful, altruistic person, one of the best human beings I've ever met. So I think that's one probably the one time I learned that first impressions are very, very risky, not to be assigned too much weight.
Amazing. So I heard his part of the story already. So now,
well,
let's
you
see.
loved me immediately.
Actually, so my first impression wasn't very good either, and I'm not sure whether it was because his first impression was bad or because he had pneumonia, so probably not in the best mood. But I remember, like, I found him a little cold, a little detached. Not the warm person with which it's easy to kind of start chatting and get familiar with. So that was the first impression. Then I think that in reality, when you earn his trust, it just opens up and it changes completely. Going back to how we are complementary and what I saw in him that made me want to kind of start a company together and kind of jump in this great adventure that we had. Luke, he actually has a lot of spikes packed in just one person. It's really rare. And if he doesn't have a spike, he believes so much in self-improvement that he's gonna learn his way through it. So for example, I don't think that at the beginning his social skills were great, but he studied that and he practiced that, and now he can easily be
the distractions a lot better.
So, but now he can actually easily be the funniest person in the room, and that I think is it just tells you how he has a lot of skills, but also the most fundamental important skill, which is to better yourself, no matter what it is that you're kind of looking for. And that something else is that he has this great ability to paint a very exciting vision and take you for the ride. So whenever I'm working with him and do something with him, it feels like the most important thing I could be doing. It feels like we're making history together. And I think that's something that rubs off to anyone he works with, and I think it's so important, right? So, yeah, there's like many more good things to tell about Luke, and also bad things like everybody else. But this is something that I find very inspiring.
It's nice to hear. That's great to hear.
I should say something nice too.
It's okay. It's okay.
No, Matt is an incredibly talented person. A soulmate for me, if you can have one, but a truly amazing person, very talented, creative, logical, an unusual combination, both the analytical part and the more imaginative part.
Yeah. So I didn't expect this to go down the route of relationship advice, right? But you seem like you're almost in a honeymoon phase, 15 years in, right? So how do you keep this energy, dynamics, that fresh? How do you guys reinvent yourselves, and how do you also split up your time, your responsibilities?
I think it's mostly the result of being picky when it comes to the people you associate with. So it's more work up front, being selective, and then the second part is investing in yourself and the relationship. I think that's actually probably true for a romantic relationship too, by the way. So being self-critical, trying to develop candor so that you point out at things that don't work early, and then you don't get offended by that criticism, but work on it. It's not that it's all perfect, but I do think we get along today as well as we ever have. Like it's truly been, I mean, I guess it's also raised a little bit in time, but upwards certainly for now almost 20 years.
It's also a matter of self-selection, right? Some co-founders come together because they want to work on a product, and so they're looking for someone who shared that experience. But for us, it was kind of the opposite. Like we both knew that we wanted to build our own thing. But I think it was, it started from a friendship and then it morphed into a business relationship. So, all the part about making sure that you're aligned when it comes to character and values was kind of, checked at the very beginning. And I think that made for a much stronger foundation to build on.
Amazing. And what was, take me back to that exact moment or to the room where you kind of looked each other into the eyes and said, okay, we're going to start something together. Because I remember from my first time, it was magical on a Skype call, and then everyone said, I'm in, let's do this. And how did it work for you? Like, was that a process, or was that a specific moment where you said, let's do it?
And look, it embarrasses me a little bit to think back about those times, because and in a way, it's also sweet, but we were so naive. We didn't know anything about business, about tech even. We just had this very strong desire to build something together. So that's where it started. We didn't have mentors. We didn't have advisors. Copenhagen, which is where, we started our first company, had a quite vibrant startup scene, but we hadn't entered it quite yet. So it was us with the idea that we kind of liked each other. We wanted to do something together. We had this dream that we shared, that we wanted to create our own company. And then it was more like we were fishing for ideas to support that dream. So the way it actually played out was that we had maybe 2 or 3 ideas on the table that we were discussing. Of course, we knew that it would be better if we did something with mobile or web, because like the barriers to entry would be lower. Honestly, I think that the reason why we went for one project rather than another is because I was slightly more persuasive in bringing them on my side, rather than because, that idea deserved a lot. So yeah, that's how it happened. We didn't do any market research or user research, and we honestly didn't know a lot of the things that we've learned about human psychology and, what it is that makes products succeed. But we were very determined. So, even out of that idea, that
almost unstoppable, I would say, which is next level. Like literally the mindset was, we'll keep going unless they shoot us down with a bazooka, literally. I don't think we ever expressed it, but the level of commitment was absolute, which I wouldn't say it's necessary to build a successful company, but almost. It's very rare that you can do that without having
and
that
that's
sort
probably
of
what
resolve.
kept you going afterwards, because what happened to your first company you mentioned already with Evertale kind of is what happens to over 90% of companies, that they for some reason don't work out, and that's where a lot of those stories end, right? But probably this belief, bazooka belief, as you said, this is what kept you going, right? So I think maybe you could walk us through the moment when you said, hey, it didn't work out in the first step, but let's just keep going. Was that even a discussion, or was it natural for you?
I think it was natural, and I will say the resolve was probably more important to go through the long failure of Evertale than to start Bending Spoons. I feel that we really saw being entrepreneurs, engineers, managers as a craft we wanted to master, like a sculpture or someone who's trying to become a sculptor, and you probably produce pretty shitty sculptures initially, and you have a vision, but you come well short of that vision because your skills are not there yet. If you're passionate about the craft, then when you fail your next sculpture, you probably can't wait to try again, because now you know you can do it better. And I think the Evertale, the startup failing, was liberating in many ways, because we could finally stop firefighting or trying to resurrect something that had no legs and start afresh with hopefully a better, more successful vision, better practices. And so not that we didn't have our fair share of emotional breakdowns or whatnot, because it was tough. We had spent 3+ years working essentially every waking hour to make it happen. So it's not easy to say, okay, we failed miserably, but there was a strong desire to try again and deploy all the lessons learned.
So were there any doubts or concerns at this point in time, or?
Not about trying again. I do not remember even discussing, hey, should we maybe apply to go work at Google instead? Like, I do not remember a single conversation like that.
Which, if anything, that experience just gave us the feeling that that was our path. If we had any doubt about it, we were sure about it. So, and, a couple of years later, 3 years later, we were better positioned. We had learned things, and we knew that the next time around, we would just have more chances,
And that was that the time when you moved to Milan and started Bending Spoons? Was that kind of at the same time, or?
Not immediately, because we founded Bending Spoons in Copenhagen. We moved it to Milan about a year later, give or take a year and a half later, when we started to expand the team. We felt we had maybe saying figured out the strategies a little bit too much, but we felt we had a more specific vision and approach for what we wanted to do, and so the topic of where to build it came up. So we pride ourselves on being quite rational and open-minded, and so we thought it seems that most companies never really ponder the location topic; they just happen to be in a place. But location probably makes a fairly significant difference in your fortunes. And so we went through a proper location strategy. I remember a 10 or 15 page document we wrote with all sorts of research in we looked at 20 or 30 locations in Canada even, I remember. And ultimately picked Italy, and within Italy, Milan, for a couple of reasons. One was the balance of sheer number of talented and well-educated people versus the opportunities they currently had was particularly favorable. And so we thought this could be a win-win. We have this massive ambition, and a lot of these people can't wait to be part of and shape that ambition and that project. And their next alternative is a lot worse. And so we could, for the company, acquire fantastic talent and make the team very good. And for these talent, give them essentially a fantastic ride, as they would give us a fantastic ride. It's really a team sport ultimately. So that was one big reason. And the second big reason, in a couple of countries, you could make similar claims, but when it was a tie, us being Italian, it was just easier. We knew some of the universities, we understood the culture a little bit better. On the margins, that made the difference. You could have said similar things of France, for example, at the time. Today, France is more developed, but I think at the time that would have been true. The second reason was we had this ambition to build a company for the ages, one of the most successful companies in the world of our generation. Not that we thought we would succeed, but that was the goal. And we thought, okay, if we failing in Copenhagen or Milan or Paris or New York is basically the same, nobody cares. But if we were to succeed, even partially, relative to that big ambition, doing it from a place that hasn't seen a whole lot of success, generally in entrepreneurship, certainly in tech for like forever, could make a very big impact in terms of inspiration, kind of igniting a virtuous cycle of economic growth, cultural advancement. When I say cultural, I don't mean like the liberal arts, but more, again, entrepreneurship and believing you can build interesting things. And Italy was a particularly appealing place in that regard because, again, was one or two steps behind some other countries that had potential. And so, we picked it. We haven't looked back. We're a very international company now. We have an office in London and people all over the planet, including the US. But trying to build a super successful, massive global company with roots in Europe in general, because you can make a similar argument for Europe overall. And Italy also was a very motivating for us.
No, and I mean, probably there's a lot of, you're the local heroes here, right? Now, looking back kind of versus 10 years ago.
Or villains, because, we find, what we learned is that when you succeed, before nobody cares.
You always have both, right? But at least you polarize. You heard.
Exactly. Initially, nobody cares either way. And then either they love you too much or they hate you too much. Like there's no middle ground.
Yeah, but I couldn't kind of agree more and also emphasize how important it is to have those role models, because Milan is actually, like a lot of other cities in Europe, a center for entrepreneurship, just in different industries. Like, so it's a lot of fashion entrepreneurs, like it's high-end luxury and so on and so forth. But kind of having a bit of inspiration for the young kids that you can also do it in tech is probably worth the risk. Like every big decision, there's pros, as you said, with the ease of hiring and kind of leaving some sort of legacy, but also challenges because you had the lack of ecosystem. There's probably not a lot of people that you can chat over coffee who go through the same challenges. So
especially at the time.
At the time, yeah.
The city has made major strides since, but at the time, certainly.
Yeah. At the time, exactly. So how did you just accept that, or did you make an extra effort to reach out to other people in other cities to kind of to share best practices? So how did you approach that?
I'd say at the beginning, we didn't really have any coaches, mentors, advisors, partly because we were nobodies, and very talented, knowledgeable people generally don't coach nobodies, but they coach people they already believe can go places. and even, access tend to follow that also, even if someone wanted to give back to people who don't necessarily deserve it, still you would struggle to find those people. And the location didn't help. And I frankly don't think we even sought that out very much. We could have done more. I don't know why, it's hard to remember, but we were quite self-reliant. We thought perhaps arrogantly we got to figure it out on our own. And I think that was both good and bad. The good part is that we came up with a lot of non-obvious insights, ways of doing things that are proven powerful for us. And the bad is, of course, sometimes we reinvented the wheel or made mistakes that others had made for us in theory, but we didn't pick up on those lessons.
Yeah, we did have, like pretty early on, a pretty unique strategy. So it was kind of hard to find like companies or founders or mentors that could, tell us something about that. So that also, is part of the equation. But yes, I totally agree that it just made us more. It just made us work harder to find out how to apply this strategy in the best possible way. I'm also sure that a lot of the things that apply to our company would apply to a lot of other companies, and we did reinvent the wheel a lot of times. So but at the same time, if you reach out to get some advice, you cannot really filter the one that applies to you and then makes you grow, and the one that instead you should discard. So I guess in a way, it was okay to be isolated like that, because it gave us a lot of self-reliance and resilience.
Yeah.
So
cool. So I mean, your first acquisition was, I think, $10,000 approximately,
give or take. Yeah.
Now you're writing 9-figure checks. I don't know what the most expensive acquisition is. Maybe you can share. But you've come a long way.
I can't say which one it is, but I can say it's $500 million.
$500 million. Wow. So it's fair to say that you've come a long way as a company. It's very impressive. What changed in how you evaluate, how you buy companies from this $10,000 acquisition to now?
I'd say the fundamentals haven't changed. We still look at, for digital technology businesses, we still look for businesses that are big relative to our size at the time. And we still look for businesses whose future performance we can project with reasonably good level of accuracy. And we still look for businesses that we feel we can make a lot more successful, we can improve substantially. But of course, over a decade of massive investment, our platform, so to say, so all of our proprietary technologies, our expertise, our employer brand have made massive, leaps and bounds. We now have, depends on how you count them, but more than 50 proprietary technologies, some of which could easily be sold as a B2B business and maybe worth hundreds of millions. Very sophisticated stuff. Lots of insights on how to run these businesses. Plenty of first-party data out. In 2025, we expect more than 600,000 unique job applications. So that's big tech levels, pretty much almost. And we'll only hire 200 people. So that's an insanely selective application process. And of course, that couldn't have been the case 10 years ago. We have a lot more resources. Like you said, we're able to deploy more capital, more people. We expect to invest at least $1.5 billion in acquisitions in 25 alone. Again, that was, I wouldn't say unthinkable, but certainly very far when looked at through the lens of 2015 or 2014 when we were moving the first steps. So the nature of it hasn't dramatically changed. It's just that we've gotten much, much better at it, and the scale is unimaginably larger.
Okay. And then in terms of risk and how you look at risk, because obviously initially you have only to gain and almost nothing to lose, right? Now, if this, you can't really screw up too many $500 million acquisitions, right? So how did your perspective with respect to risk taking when you acquire those companies change? Do you take a longer time? Do you have more data now where you say, hey, we kind of know better now, and that's where the risk reduction is coming in? Or
well, I would argue that at the time we had 40,000 dollars, let's say. It was actually euros, but very close. And we had to pay for rent and living wages. So we couldn't have screwed up many $10,000 acquisition either. Maybe one at most. Today we could screw up a $500 million acquisition, one or two. Then it would be difficult. So I think the risk profile has remained similar. It's just we've been adding zeros. But as a general rule, we try to be extremely thorough, always have been in our assessments. We think probabilities, scenarios. When we assess an acquisition, we run fairly sophisticated Monte Carlo simulations. We will not acquire a business where the median case is not very appealing, or where a pretty pessimistic case is such that it would be ruinous or even close to ruinous for us.
I would be, by the way, curious. What's your base case when you acquire a company? Do you think of a 10x return on the asset value, or
we don't disclose that for competitive reasons, but at this scale, it would be completely unreasonable to aim for 10x. It's very good. It's very good returns, but not as crazy as you just said. But we've been able to generate very good returns for share owners, for sure.
Amazing. So I mean, you basically pioneered I don't want to say pioneered, but in a way you did pioneer this big trend of business school students going into roll-ups, which is now happening all over industries, right? In the US and Europe. You did it in tech, which not too many people do, but some do. Like you had the roll-ups with Amazon, sellers with Ferrari, Razor Group, SellerX, D2C brands, and a lot of them actually did fall flat, right? So is that because they're missing something that you're nailing, or what is your take on those unsuccessful roll-ups and other tech verticals?
Yeah, the honest answer is that I don't know. I don't know those businesses well. I've heard of them superficially. I haven't looked into them, so I don't know why, to what extent they failed, why they failed. I think I know very well why we have succeeded in a big way, and we keep doing really well. And there's a ton of substance. We have invested an untold amount of money, time, sweat, and tears into building very advanced knowledge, very advanced technology, a very powerful employer brand, a distinctive, deeply rooted culture. And all of these come together to enable us to take not every business, but a lot of businesses and make them way more successful. And when you can make them way more successful, there's space for paying a highly appealing price for current ownership, while still generating really good returns for Benny Spruncer and our share owners. It's not something you could do overnight. Even if we started afresh, I think with all we know today would take us, it's taken 12 years to get here. Maybe we could get here in 7 or 8, but not a lot shorter. It's just a lot of hard work and investment. It's a bit, I suppose, like Formula One racing. You could have a great engine, not enough. You're going to suck. You have to have great tires, great engine, great engineers, a good pilot. And it takes forever to fine-tune each part. And then all of a sudden you're winning. And if others have been a little bit more superficial, not as thorough, they could lose badly for what appears to be a relatively small difference. But there is a world of effort and investment to get there.
And in a way, this is where the idea that we were very compelled to starting a company and growing into a success story. And so this focus on the company itself and not so much on the product being kind of more of an excuse, gave us the long-term thinking and the desire to invest in the company that made these long-term plays possible. So given that we weren't, we're not pushing for a 3-year exit where you would focus on building as fast as you can and you would cut corners, et cetera, all the investments we made into the platform, we just saw it as something that would yield returns in a very long time. And we were fine with making those investments because we knew that we were in, for a long play.
Okay. I mean, it's so interesting to hear about how you think strategically about that. Let's talk about some examples and case studies. So maybe you can share the amount of businesses and brands that you currently own and operate Where is it now? Where is it, in 3 years? Maybe no one knows, but maybe you have a fair opinion on that. So what are the common themes out among those brands? What are differences?
Yeah, so we currently have in our portfolio, dozens of products. So it would be pointless to list them all, but I could mention some examples, perhaps the most important ones, and go through some of those and try to find these commonalities if they're out there. So in no particular order, WeTransfer, file transfer, file sharing platform with more than 70 million monthly active users. It's basically the de facto standard in Europe, especially when it comes to sharing large files. Then we have Evernote, a digital notebook with a lot of complex features and a large degree of customization. And there we have more than 1 million paying customers. The latest acquisition is Komoot. So it's an app and website where you can plan your outdoor activities, being some hikes or bike rides. And it's like there's a great community, a lot of user-generated content, and there's more than 8 million people using it every month. Once again, it's, I think, a point of reference for this type of things when it comes to Europe, especially. We have Meetup. So it's a platform where organizers can organize events and people can join them, and these events are organized around shared interests. And there as well, it's every month more than 300,000 events are organized. So again, massive scale. Of course, we have Remini, an AI-powered photo enhancer that also gives you the ability to create photos from scratch through generative AI. That's one of our largest products when it comes to user base, with more than 100 million users around the world.
It's probably there is no official ranking, but one of the top most generative AI products in any category globally, probably top 5. It's massive usage.
So I think
at some point, at some point we were using so many GPUs for all the inference that and that was on Google Cloud. We became a kind of an emergency case at Google to help us scale fast enough, just to give a sense of the insane level of usage.
At peak times, we used to employ something like from 30 to 50,000 GPUs. And when I talk to tech people around this, they look at me and they're like, you're either making it up or you got the number wrong, because that's OpenAI levels.
Yeah.
But
sounds expensive as well.
Sounds expensive as well. But we were able in Remini to nail the right approach to the business model, whereas we would be able to offer AI-powered features for free, of course, with some limitations. And we would be, I think, the only consumer app that offered you this, ability, apart from OpenAI or
especially in image generation.
In image generation,
not
of
textual.
course.
That's a little bit cheaper.
Which is more expensive. And the way we did that was that we nailed the business model to make this possible, so as to have paying customers subsidize the others. And at the same time, we worked a lot on reducing the cost of inference, like making crazy optimizations so as to gain, cents and cents to reduce costs and to be able to offer these at a much lower cost. And so if you're
super
able to
interesting
offer,
engineering problem, by the way, very fascinating.
If you're able to offer these features that went viral a lot of times for free to this massive user base, out of that comes an insane consumption as well. But luckily we're the ROI is positive, so we can afford that. Yeah, that was an insane ride. But anyways, so if you try to look for commonalities.
Can I add one more? I think because it's really quite. So we also own Brightcove, which is it was a publicly traded company on Nasdaq. We took it private actually only a few months ago. Fully enterprise video platform, very sophisticated video technology for transcoding, streaming, used by massive clients. It's only 2,000 customers, quote unquote only, but the average ticket is almost $100,000. So the biggest names you could imagine, I can't name them, but you could pretty much, all the big companies that need video use it. And that's entirely sales driven, relatively few massive customers. So we really span the gamut from Remini, which is over 100 million people, each paying nothing or a relatively small amount of money, maybe $100 a year, to Brightcove, which is relatively small number of enterprise customers, each paying 50,000, 100,000, even some a few $1 million a year in big contracts.
Okay, and then so those are two great examples because they're so opposed to each other, right? In terms of just the ARPU and the technical problems that you have, the level of service that you provide, and the way how you think about building those companies. So, how much of your playbook is actually fixed, and how much do you kind of create a new playbook post acquisition for every single company? And what did you learn over the past acquisitions?
Yeah. So,
Go?
yeah, I would say that. So for us, it's easier, of course, to tackle products that have similarities either in business model or type of customer, with products that we already have in our portfolio, and there perhaps we already, created some playbooks that are perfect for that. But we want to really find a good trade-off between doing some of those acquisitions where we're pretty sure about what we're going to do for many months from when we acquired the product, but also dive into completely new territory where some of the things that we've learned, we know we can reapply, but we also know that a lot of it will be kind of learning. And by doing that, we just expand our playbook. And then we also expand our ability to know precisely what we will be doing if we encounter another target like that. So I think it's been this trade-off between exploitation of the know-how we created until that point, but also exploration in order to expand that know-how. And this is how we are able to sort of target and think about acquisitions in fields that we hadn't tackled before. But as a consequence of this, it's really hard to find a common theme. So if anything, as Luke said, we really span the gamut from mainstream B2C to enterprise. So if I were to find perhaps one commonality, Luke, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say it's, at the level that we are now, it's either kind of established brands, recognized, typically, reference points in their industry, in their vertical. Some of them might be a little more niche, but within their vertical, they're very much well known.
Yeah, generally number one, maybe number two, but leading. Brightcove was clearly the market leader. Evernote, you could argue it's a little bit of a different use case, but you could say Notion is the market leader, but Evernote is number two probably.
And they address also slightly different use cases. So very recognized brands or tackling some use cases that are very important, crucial for the consumer. So these are commonalities that you'll find pretty much everywhere in our portfolio.
Interesting. And how can I imagine that very specifically? Let's say you acquire WeTransfer. Is one of the founders actually jumping on it? Do you have a SWAT team that goes from company to company that you acquire, or is it always a new setup, basically?
I'll take this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So first thing we establish, call it a task force, including some people who have done it before or experts in different functional areas, engineering, product design, marketing. And these people join the team. Some of them will take on top leadership positions. We'll spend the first few weeks or few months, depending on a bunch of factors, almost entirely in learning mode, learning from everybody at the company, being in the trenches, working on projects, talking to customers. We try to get up to speed very quickly on ideally everything there is to know. Of course, you never know everything, and then we try to develop a vision, a picture of that business that's as close to the ideal version as we can imagine, and that ignores as much as possible the status quo. It's difficult because first you need to see everything to learn, and then you need to unsee it to imagine. So it's actually a fairly challenging, cognitively speaking, process. But ideally, the new vision is not hindered or limited by whatever happens to be the case right now. And then we get to work to close the gap between status quo and that vision as quickly and as fully as we can. That may require pretty drastic changes. Then across the board, we rewrite big chunks of the code base, re-architect the cloud infrastructure, redesign the UI, typically add lots of features. We may even remove some features. restructure large parts of the organization, work on the culture, add new people. Like it is really time-consuming, challenging. But if we do it right, and of course you always need a little bit of luck, then we can generate good returns by making that business a lot more successful. Typically, both improving revenue and lowering cost, and that enables us to invest to make our platform even more powerful and to go after new acquisitions, larger, more challenging ones.
I think a big part of why Betting Spoons is able to create value, you said, is because you see, some pitfalls or some things that don't really work that well. And you had this comparison with the football coach, right? I think in one of your previous podcasts where you say the initial founders were maybe great, but at a certain point in time, a new coach brings fresh ideas, fresh energy.
Oh yeah, and that's important. Like typically, I mean, not always, but typically, the management teams we find, whether they're founders or professional managers who were brought in later, they're very capable people. The reasons why we can improve the business are very rarely because of incompetence from previous teams. It's more the massive backlog or baggage of insights we have accumulated through the very specific activity that we run, which is run many different businesses, being able to take bets, make risky bets, and learn from those. We don't have all of our eggs in one basket, unlike most management teams. The scale we have, massive advantage. Integrating under the same umbrella, multiple businesses, again, incredible efficiencies, ability to move people around.
And the efficiencies come mainly, so let's maybe zoom in on this. So the efficiencies don't come from synergies between the apps. It's more from the data that you have. And as from my understanding, from your ability to make bigger bets, because if those don't work out, you have a lot of different eggs and you can kind of reinvest, right? Is there a certain, value creation where you feel that this is really underrated, and maybe it's so secret that you don't want to share it here, but are there, for instance, things where you look at across, you obviously see a lot more apps than you buy, right? So are there certain things that you feel are oftentimes not done correctly, be it retention, strategies, pricing, the overhead cost structures, anything else that...
Can I talk about like a superpower that's a little more hidden, I think, because again, you don't really see it surface in the changes we do on the product, but has a big responsibility in determining success. And that is, being able to allocate, you mentioned it briefly, being able to allocate our people where we see that they can create the biggest impact. So for us, we'll always think in terms of, let's think about all the people we have in the company. Is there a place where each one of them, if moved, could be creating more value? And typically you see things such as we've just acquired a new product. There's a lot of need to kind of go in there, learn, and act. So that's a perfect place where they might be more impactful than where they currently are. And the process of moving them to this new reality, I mean, we don't wait for, the yearly reorganization. We don't have to kind of negotiate and, convince them or persuade them, but it's really part of our culture. Everybody knows that at any point in time, they might be taken out of the current context and move somewhere else. But the reason why we can do that...
To be clear, we ask them if they're okay with that, but 95% of the time they're excited because it's really become part of who we are, so it's part of the... Being a good team player is, of course, I'm going to move to the next front line and help there.
But also, the fact that you're moving them to areas where they have bigger impact, that would excite everyone, right?
So how do you do that in practice? Because obviously that's the holy grail, and every organization would love to do that. So is that more of a top-down decision? Is that done bottom up?
Both. It's a combination. Like, of course, we take into consideration the passions and abilities of people, and at the same time, we have like a top-down vision of where the biggest opportunity for value creation is around the company. So you combine those things, and then you determine how people get moved around. And so, like,
can I interject and say something more on that? Because I think this is quite uncommon. We have, in our culture, the idea that each person should be pursuing the highest impact opportunity at all times is so inculcated, so deeply rooted, that very often it's individuals who come up and say, I should be doing something else. I'm not moving the needle enough. We have constantly, recently, cases of, say, one of our, the leader of one of our businesses saying, I'm running this business with, 60, 70 people. I think 20 would be more, closer to optimal. Consider other businesses where the other 40 can be tried. That's very unusual. Almost any company out there in the world, there's a lot of empire building.
Yeah.
People will fight to the death not to lose reports, because then, here it's pretty much the opposite.
And how did you create that environment where that is incentivized?
12 years, one person at a time, coaching each person, hiring almost entirely new graduates who don't come in with what we would consider wrong preconceptions of what good business looks like. And, lots of coaching, lots of consistency, repeat. It is painful. It is time consuming. Like I said before, we could do it in maybe 30% less time now with maybe infinite money and more credibility, but it takes forever. But then you have a very high density of, this is the culture, these are the principles we follow, and magic happens. Then things happen that seem almost impossible in your typical company.
And how
I think it's also a matter of aligning incentives, though. And there's a couple of important incentives here. So beside the one where you're moved to where you can create more impact, I think that no matter where you work, like if you work for a year on a product, you get to diminishing returns about what you can learn around it. I mean, you've learned the architecture, the tech stack, you've learned, the business, etc. So at that point, you're like, my growth as a professional would accelerate if I moved to a different place. And so outside of bending spoons, you have two ways to do that. You either stick with a certain company and you try to move kind of upward. So you try to get more and more responsibility. And the way you learn is through this expanded responsibility, but you're still married to that one product. So, the expansion of the context is still quite limited. Or you can change company every year. So in that case, you change product every year and you're exposed to different things, but at the same time, you invest an insane amount of time in getting to know the people, getting to know the culture. Often, if you're the new one, you're placed in a kind of minor role just to prove yourself and then moved somewhere else. Whereas here, you can have the combination of both. Here, you can really pack, you can really pack like 10 years of normal experience into 3, because you got this insane opportunity to operate on different products while staying within the same company culture, while knowing the people that work with you. I think that's great. That accelerates the pace of learning by a lot. And the other way in which we try to align incentives is that we really believe in every one of our colleagues becoming an owner of the company. So we have this approach whereby anyone can convert a portion of their compensation up to a certain limit to stock options at a steep discount with respect to the latest valuation. And I would say that, I'm not sure about the stats, but I think basically everyone chooses to convert like in different amounts. And that creates one last very big incentive, because the way, even if you just thought about it purely financially, you didn't care about self-improvement, or you weren't attached enough to the company, you were just thinking rational in terms of financial incentives, it's often that, wealth generation happens more as an owner of the company than as, hoping that you'll get a raise next year. And this is despite us paying, top of market in basically each one of our roles. So I think that this combination of company culture, aligned incentives, makes it so that it's so easy to allocate people to where they can create the biggest impact. That makes a ton of difference. Like in your average company, I think that you're just victim of the inertia by which you kind of wait for things to happen by themselves, because change is so resisted and having those conversations is so tough. But once this becomes second nature, everything becomes much easier. And really, like if you took a peek into the way we operate this move and changes, it's really fascinating. We take it for granted, but I think it's really rare.
Yeah, it's so great to speak about it because there's a lot of talk about attracting talent, right? And a lot of attention goes on recruiting the right people, but there's very limited attention to, at least at the startup world, okay, how do you make the best out of the talent and how do you challenge how to allocate them, right? Because it's way more complicated. So it feels like you figured it out quite organically. Is there like certain inspirations that you drew upon when you kind of built this like operating system within your company, or how would you compare that to maybe some other companies that do something along those lines?
I don't know. I'm sure we've drawn some inspiration here and there. I can't really put my finger on a specific case. Like we said earlier, for better or worse, we have reinvented the wheel and discovered powerful insights. A bright side of the same coin. I think a company that I don't think I would say that we drew inspiration from it, because we only got to learn about its culture quite late, when ours was mostly in its present form. But I think this company's culture has quite a few similarities with ours. That would be Netflix. I think very mature, trusting, high bar, high performance culture. I think probably what we do is quite unusual. We are less worried about everybody in general and everybody who works here agreeing with everything we do, and more concerned about making Bending Spoons the nearly perfect place for super bright, super driven people to thrive. You can't do that and make it the perfect place for everybody else. You have to pick we look at the jobs we offer as a product. We want it to be far and away the best product in the world for super bright, super driven people. And I think there's plenty we can improve, but I think we've done a good job at that. We have people here who are, a person leading Evernote, as we were talking about it earlier. She's 27, 28. She's been with us for 7 years, working part-time initially as a student. Evernote is a business, $140 million in revenue, millions of customers. It could be a publicly traded company in its own merit, certainly in Europe. Typically, a known founder CEO of such a company would be at least 50 years old. And so not many companies like Bending Spoons can offer you becoming essentially the CEO of that business at 28 or 27. She was probably 27 when she did. And would leave you almost complete autonomy in how to run it. We're not imposing at all, barring when it comes to talent maybe and cash allocation, but of course, to enable someone so hard charging, determined, and capable to succeed, you have to provide a certain level of freedom and room for maneuvering that could be uncomfortable for people who are, more laid back and uninterested in being in a high talent dense environment. And so you got to pick. We picked very clearly, and I think that was very important and successful for us.
Yeah, there's probably the last piece of the puzzle that is important to spell out. Beside general managers, we believe in having small teams that work on these massive products. And so with respect
this
to
Jeff Bezos Amazon pizza strategy, right? Yeah.
Exactly. But where it's like if one of these pizza team was actually managing the whole Amazon, so not just like a project in it. And so that's where the difference comes from. Like if you have a team of 40 people managing a $100+ million business, the level of impact that each one of them has on the trajectory is insane by any standard. Yeah. But that also it creates a lot of reward and motivation, because you feel like you can really contribute. It's not like it's so great, I can now work at company X where they have such a cool product, but it's like maybe 10,000 people working on it or 1,000 people working on it. Whereas here it's like 40 people and you're sharing the impact just with them. Very often you'll be
if the team wins, it's you. If it fails, it's you, in a way. Like it's very different. It's personal, and that's incredibly motivating and fulfilling for the type of person we try to attract. Almost unique. I don't think many companies out there, if any, can offer this.
And again, it's not something that we kind of, a lot of this stuff is like a byproduct of some tenets and the sort of that we place at the foundation of what we do. but it's really, a byproduct. So out of being lean, being effective, believing in having extremely talented people rather than sheer numbers, all that also brings this positive effect that basically reinforce the culture and make the company stronger.
Well, what I find really impressive about your company culture and operating system is that kind of a lot of companies start this way, right? So if you have the first 10, 50, 100 employees, you get those fast charging graduates, but at some point in time, there's a board member, or maybe you as a founder who say, maybe for this, I need someone who has done it already, or, I need one adult in the room. And though, it seems like you resisted so far. Is there a moment, or are there some experience that you can share where you took on people that had already leadership roles with other tech companies? Probably they had a lot to unlearn and relearn here. How has that worked? And is that a path that you feel is not something that you want to go down?
We've done it a few times, very few by any standards, usually a handful of times, some successful and some not so successful. The successful ones, one of the reasons why they succeeded was, like you said, they came in naked first. They only thought about leveraging their experience at a later point in time once they had fully absorbed what we had to offer. And I think that that was critical. But also often I don't think we did a good job as a company in creating the right conditions for these people to succeed. So, but going forward, for us, it's pretty much all new graduates, 99% of the time. We get a lot of it. We get a lot of applications from senior people. It's not that but we're big believers in trying to be absolutely amazing at one or two things, not try to be the best. And right now, we want to be the best in the world at attracting, identifying, nurturing insanely great young talent, and make sure that they have an unbelievable career, faster, better than essentially anywhere else. And we need to stay focused on that goal. We can't try to do too many things at the same time, or we'll certainly fail.
Yeah, makes sense. Always stick to what you're great at in a way. You talked earlier about how you're local heroes and villains at the same time, but now you're at a scale where you're global. So global heroes and villains probably. Are there certain misconceptions that you feel people have fairly or unfairly about bending spoons?
I think our model is I think you could say it's unique and also counterintuitive, that there's plenty of misconceptions from people on the outside. Building on what we're just discussing, I think one that's fairly common is, as you know, when we acquire a company, often we reduce staff quite substantially. And typically the narrative is from people who don't, or nothing to know from the outside, is that we do this because we don't plan to invest in the product, and therefore why would you have as many people as before? Truth is, the vast majority of times we greatly accelerate product development. We can, prove this in almost any KPIs, or like whether it's retention or literal number of features shipped per year. Evernote, for example, last year we shipped over 100 improvements. This year we're already at 70 improvements, which is a crazy pace relative to historical levels. And retention is the highest it's ever been. So, I guess customers vote with their feet, so to say. So if retention is the best it's ever been, despite prices are actually a little bit higher. So clearly the facts are we typically greatly accelerate the rate of say product innovation or product development, both big things and small things. So that's not the reason why we typically reduce the number of people at the company is not because we don't expect to invest in the product. It's completely different reasons, and tangentially we touched upon them before. But one is we believe that typically smaller teams with much greater autonomy and fewer managerial layers, less process, end up being way more motivated, way more productive, more speed, more quality. Two, we believe that when you have a smaller staff, you're forced to really focus on the few things that likely really matter. And in, I think, any business, very few things bring 99% of the impact, and you want to do those things super fast and super well, and not doing the other things is the first step toward doing the few things that matter fast and a high quality level. And so again, that justifies the smaller team. And then thirdly, as a minor point, but still matters, we're a much bigger organization, and so there's all sorts of efficiencies. We've got one centralized team building technology for A/B testing, for marketing, for payment management. So of course, there are redundancies that appear every time we acquire a company. But so that's a huge misconception. It couldn't be further from the truth, but it's also the lazy explanation, and so that's what people intuitively go for every single time.
I think you said in the past that you're sometimes extremely paranoid, and I had to think of my very first business angel. He ended every board meeting with "Only the paranoids survive."
Andy Grove.
Yeah.
I read the book. Yeah.
So what are you currently paranoid about?
Yeah, it's not a good. It's both a superpower and a super curse, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We have a lot of investors, and especially pretty much all spooners. That's how we call one another. Have invested in the company. I feel a massive sense of responsibility for them, and both making sure that we never mislead any of these people into believing there's more potential than there actually is, and two, we want to deliver. And seize that potential if we realize that potential if we can. And so that's something that keeps me up at night, just that sense of weight on my shoulders, which I think a lot of colleagues share, but I certainly feel it. We have, in absolute terms, a pretty substantial amount of debt, well over $1 billion. It's not a whole lot relative to our profits, but it's still quite a lot of money. And although we feel we have followed very prudent policies when it comes to debt, it's still a risk. If you don't pay it back, that would be disastrous. So we keep looking at the numbers and make sure that the risk of that happening is tiny, as negligible. We care so much about attracting and retaining top talent, and so we're constantly obsessed with what can we do to make our product, the jobs we offer, even better. What can we do to tell that story accurately, particularly with all the noise we talked about before, false narratives, the hate and the love, neither probably being ideal. I prefer a world of balanced assessments. I think it would be a better world. I would very readily give up the excessive love if I could get rid of the excessive hate too. And so how do we make sure that we put out there accurate information people can judge us based on? So all of these are things I constantly think about and that gnaw at me sometimes, and in not too healthy ways.
Matt, you also paranoid?
Well, as a product person, maybe like something that I'm paranoid about is, we choose the businesses we acquire because they have a dominant position perhaps in the market, but the market is constantly evolving. And as more and more tools appear where basically anyone can code up something that would take months before, the challenges become more and more. So, the thought of how do you retain that position of dominance despite the changes in the market and despite the competition, that's something that, I keep on wondering about. Yeah.
Okay. So Bending Spoons is now a few hundred millions in revenues, few hundred millions in profits. I'm not sure if you're disclosing
1.2 billion in revenue.
1.2 billion revenue. Okay. I wasn't sure if it's public information, but
I don't know. But we typically share revenue. It's not a big problem.
Yeah. Around about 5 billion in valuation, rumored. And where do you see room for the next? Is there a ceiling? Where do you want to grow? Is there more of the same? Do you feel that you need to kind of rethink some basic strategies?
Not in the immediate future. There's a massive amount of digital technology businesses out there. Many are looking for a permanent home. Because something that we do also that we found very appealing for sellers is we never sell a business. I mean, never say never. We have never sold a business we acquired. We don't have any plans to sell one. It's quite appealing for sellers to know that there will be stability. That
the brand is going to be around, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's plenty looking for a buyer, and many more will be looking for a buyer in the future. Literally thousands of sizable businesses, the digital technology industry is gigantic. So I think there's room to grow quite a lot further. If you ask me, is there a path to increase revenue by a factor of 100? Probably not a straightforward one. Then maybe we would need to expand into even more industries, go beyond consumer internet, self-serve B2B, maybe even enterprise software. I'd like to think a lot of the competitive advantages we're building, like employer brand, company culture, the deep principles for how to make good decisions from businesses would translate fairly well, but naturally the evolution would be substantial. There have been companies, serially acquisitive compounders that have managed that transition successfully. One comes to mind, and that's Danaher. They're in industrial, so very physical things and lean manufacturing and whatnot. Started off in the 1980s or early 1990s, and they've been compounding for 30, 35 years, I think, at very good rates. And they've expanded into healthcare and diagnostics and very successfully. They're now probably worth $500 billion or so the last time I checked. So there are examples, although they're different, but close enough that give us a general direction or a certain glimmer of possibility, and we'll make sure to pursue that and seize it if possible. But we do have a clear path for the next, say, 5 years.
And I think you once said this is kind of your 30-year life's work. Is that still the plan? What happens after the 30 years?
We're at year 12, so it's it's long enough that we should be credible on these sort of promises. Yeah, absolutely. I've always found that I find it more inspiring to do a few things and do them really well. I feel the same way with the friendships. My wife, I'm a loyal guy. I don't look for volume. I look for few things that matter, so to say. So yeah, I'd much rather, on my deathbed, I'd much rather feel I contributed to one huge, highly admired and probably hated too, because I think that seems to be necessary at this point, institution than having did my toes in multiple things of more middling success. So yeah, 30 years as just a pretty high level to give a sense of the commitment. I could be dead by year 30, who knows? But so yeah, I hope I can continue contributing. I think it's more likely that I would. I probably not want to be here if I felt I'm not the best person for the job, or someone I trust felt that way. But as long as I'm needed, I'm unlikely to not be there for the company and my colleagues. I mean, you never know. Health, there are so many unknowns in life, but
cool. Well, that's been really amazing to kind of hear the insights of how you think about operating and how you think about strategy. Would you be up for some final rapid fire questions?
Can try not.
Okay, let's start with number one. Which company would you secretly love to acquire?
Google. Yeah, I've said it before. I mean, who knows? We'll see.
So, if I told you any,
I greatly admire Google.
Yeah,
it's not that's why I'd love to have a chance to make an impact, but it's not reasonable in the next few years, of course.
I'm pretty sure that if I mention any for-profit company, there would be kind of rumors that we're after it. I mean, Google perhaps is a little too far away still for now.
Year 25, maybe.
Year 25. Who knows? No, but
but I mean, people thought at some point Yahoo was too big to be acquired, to even be in a discussion, and then it got acquired.
Yeah, that's true.
A bunch of
so never say never.
Yeah, never say never. But I'll tell you like a non-profit one. So I actually admire the work of Wikipedia. I think it's one of those companies that had a massive impact and is not really recognized so much, acknowledged. It's taken for granted. But the design has been the same for 20 years now. And I think there's so much more that you could be doing by kind of rethinking the product, perhaps bringing it into the social media age, making it easier to kind of share things in a format that's more absorbable and entertaining, stuff like that. I think if you own such a product, there's sky's the limit for how you could transform it.
It's a great product. I've been a donor actually for as long as I can remember. I love Wikipedia.
Yeah, and maybe
very important.
Maybe that's the other part, right? You want a company like that to thrive, and right now, they depend massively on donations. It would be nice to think about a play whereby some of that is paid for. Just like to help the business thrive and be more sustainable in the future. So that could also be.
It could stay pro bono, no profit.
Yeah.
But I agree that there could be an upside in having a premium product in there.
100%. What's the most underrated founder skill these days?
Yeah, so like
go first.
For me, I think it's humility, right? And I think that has to do with the fact that if you're a founder, you believe that your work is like convincing people, persuading people, influencing people. So like, you know, you try to study the art, you try to improve your charisma to make that possible. And that often comes with forgetting to be humble and remembering that, you know, no matter how strong you feel about something, you might be wrong about it. So I think humility is underrated, because if you show yourself to be humble, if you show yourself that you have an opinion, but you're very willing to rediscuss it if new information comes along, that opens up the door for people, for smart people, for knowledgeable people to provide feedback that they know will be processed. And, you know, those ideas will become better. So again, it's not the trait that you associate with the archetypal founder, but I think it's a very important one.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. Especially smart people will appreciate you more. I think sometimes stupid people like to follow leaders with absolute certainty, but I think as a leader, you much rather be followed by smart people. So I'd say patience, not in the way that, like, I think an entrepreneur needs to have a massive sense of urgency. So not patience in the sense of, well, we can take it easy, we'll get there eventually, but more in the sense of understanding that a great thing, a great vision may take a long time and to be accomplished, and being able to take the millions of steps it takes to get there. Patience in that way, and I think a lot of the time, especially I sound old saying, you know,
You are
young people these days
compared to the average colleague, you are statistically speaking.
Yeah, average age of the company is like 28. So yes, I'm 29. You know, so. No, but people these days sometimes do seem to want it now. Which on the one hand, it's good to have that ambition and drive, but you rarely get it all and now. People who got it all, whatever that means, typically are the people who stuck with it for a long time and took the millions of steps to climb the mountain. And so patience in that way, continuity, consistency, very precious and fairly rare quality, I think.
100% agree. Yeah.
I mean, you do have like overnight successes as well every now and then, but they typically fade away as quickly as they came. So.
But also they're so few and far between.
They're also very few.
It's not a strategy to say I'm going to have success
tomorrow. Yeah. So last question, if not an entrepreneur, what would you be most likely doing right now?
I'd probably be working for, I actually don't like the word working for, but just someone else, like an entrepreneur. I don't think I need to be the guy in charge or a founder necessarily. It happened to be the case, but what I know I need is to be part of a very ambitious, grand project where I feel I'm helping build something worthwhile, bigger than myself. And if it meant following someone else's lead, I'd be pretty happy doing that as long as I admire the person. I actually hate to be managed by someone whose intelligence and integrity I don't respect. But so I'd probably just be looking for someone doing something that I think it's inspiring, and I would try to help them do that.
Yeah, I think that, I've always felt like I love to create, no matter really the context, the vertical, the what, and up to the point where I met Luke and my other co-founder. I didn't know how much I love to create within the business, like within business. So right now, I love that. I love being able to create value for users, but also for the company, business value as well. So if I hadn't fallen in love with that, I would probably be creating something else. Perhaps I would be an architect or, some movie director, who knows? But I think that would still be part of my life.
Wasn't that a childhood dream? I think you told me at some point.
I'm still in love with the idea of becoming a movie director at some point, or a producer, perhaps. But right now I feel that my time is much better spent on brand new spoons. So
There's time. There's still time.
There's time, but not so much.
Matt, Luke, it's been a pleasure having you. Thanks for sharing your insights.
Thank you. A pleasure talking with you.